Angels superstar Mike Trout testified in the wrongful death trial of his former teammate Tyler Skaggs. Trout said that he never saw any signs of drug use before Skaggs died of an overdose back in 2019.
And that's important testimony. Skaggs' family is trying to prove the Angels knew their employee, Eric Kay, was providing drugs to Skaggs. They're seeking more than $200 million in damages. Kay is serving a 22-year prison sentence for giving Skaggs the fentanyl-laced pills that killed him. Joining us now is former federal prosecutor Neama Rahmani. Thank you so much for being with us this morning about this.
Of course, Jamie Sheba, thanks for having me as always.
So I do want to talk about how the civil trial is different than the criminal case against Eric Kay, because this civil trial with the damages they're seeking, I mean, I think the reason I'm so interested in watching this is because this could have real implications on the Angels team itself and baseball here in LA.
No question, $200 million is a lot of money. So the difference between the criminal case and the civil is the criminal case is putting someone in prison. And we know Kay is doing more than 20 years in federal prison for providing the fentanyl that killed Skaggs. The civil case is about money, and obviously someone like Kay doesn't have that type of money to pay. So what the family is trying to do is go after the Angels organization. And to do so, they need to prove one of two things: that Kay was acting within the course and scope of his employment when he provided the fatal pill, or that the Angels were negligent in hiring, retaining, and supervising Kay, and therefore the organization itself should have to pay money damages.
Yeah, so how hard is it to prove that the Angels knew or should have known about drug use in the clubhouse? Why is it not just enough that Eric Kay worked for the Angels?
So when it comes to criminal activities, they're generally not considered within the course and scope of employment. So for instance, if you all are driving for CBS to the scene of a report and you're involved in an accident, well, the organization or the entity is going to be liable because you're working on behalf of your employer at the time.
Right.
But if you fight someone, that's generally not considered within the scope of one's employment. That's a criminal act. It's considered outside. So that's why the defense here is arguing that the drug dealing and drug use was not within the course and scope.
That's really interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah. So, okay, how important is the testimony from players, you know, as someone as big as Mike Trout, in establishing responsibility here on the team?
Well, Mike Trout being one of the greatest Angels players of all time, his testimony is going to resonate with the jurors. And his testimony was important because, setting aside whether this was an official activity, right? If the Angels knew that Kay was using and providing drugs and they didn't do anything about it, that could potentially ratify the criminal activity, or that by itself is enough. So you heard Trout testify that Kay was wired, he was sweating, he was doing different stunts for money. So he knew that Kay was using drugs. Now, of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that he was dealing drugs or Angels management knew, but it was important testimony, and he was the first and maybe even the most important player to testify so far in this trial.
Very interesting. Okay, so what kind of evidence could actually link the team to any negligence?
So any text messages, any witness testimony or statements that management knew what Kay was doing and they turned a blind eye. That's how the Skaggs family could potentially get a large verdict. Again, if Angels management knew what Kay was doing and they chose to do nothing about it, then of course they may be held liable. Now, the defense is going to argue that Skaggs himself needs to take responsibility, and there's comparative or contributory negligence on the player and his family, because by taking drugs, you are really playing Russian roulette with your own life.
It's all very interesting.
It's tough, especially when you have addiction and pill use and finances.
Someone on the team who was helping with that, and it's all very complicated.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one to keep watching.
But Neama, your distinction of what makes this criminally versus civilly responsible is very interesting. So thank you for being with us this morning to help us understand this case.
Of course, thanks for having me as always. We'll be following this one closely.
Yes, we will.